Genetic approaches for sport performance. How far are we? The key physiological determinants of endurance exercise performance are maximum oxygen uptake, the VO2 max, the lactate threshold, and efficiency, also called as running economy. VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen that the body can use, or maximum oxygen consumption. Improving it will enable to increase the time that a body is able to do moderate or high-intensity exercise. Lactate threshold is a maximum effort or intensity that an athlete can maintain for an extended period of time, with little or no increase in lactate in the blood. And finally, running economy is a complex, multifunctional concept that represents the sum of various metabolic, cardiorespiratory, biomechanical, and neuromuscular characteristics during submaximal running. Data on these three variables can be modeled to predict performance. For example, the so-called velocity at VO2 max was shown to be highly correlated with running performance. VO2 max can be seen as the upper limit of aerobic capacity. The lactate threshold related to the function of VO2 max that can be sustained for a duration longer than a few minutes, and efficiency or economy related to the actual power, output, or speed during a race that can be generated at a given VO2. So the question that raised is, what is known about the contribution of DNA variation to these factors? The author of this research provided an overview on the topic. A key question, then, is what constitutes genetic? One approach is to focus on the heritability of key traits related to performance. These are typically statistical arguments based on the correlation of a given trait between family members, such as the twins. If the correlation between monozygotic twins is greater than the correlation between dizygotic twins, then the interpretation is that the disease similarity is due primarily to greater similarity in the DNA of monozygotic twins than dizygotic twins. For VO2 max, the heritability can be very high for monozygotic twins, consistent with the idea that there is a major genetic component to this variable. Twin and other family studies also indicate that there is a significant genetic component to the increase in VO2 max, seen with a few months of fitness-type training. However, despite the observation highlighted above, there is a suggestion that there is a strong genetic component to training, specific DNA variants associated with the VO2 max, and how VO2 max responds to training have been hard to find. Another way to think about endurance performance is via the so-called oxygen transport cascade. The path of oxygen from the head to the tissues is considered. Therefore, in addition to the cardiac output and red cell mass, factors such as the lung, capillaries, and skeletal muscles are incorporated into this approach. Using this schematic, is it possible to further summarize what is known about DNA, based on explanation for differences in other key steps in the oxygen transport cascade. Regarding the lung, a number of studies were conducted to understand the role of the DNA in a lung function. The take-home message from this study is that there are a large number of potential common DNA variants that explain a tiny fraction of inter-individual differences in lung function. Thus, there is no reason to believe that DNA variants explain any major differences in lung function in elite athletes. For example, those populations that have lived an entire life at a high altitude and have increased pulmonary capacity to do adaptation. After the lung, the next step in the oxygen transport cascade is cardiac output. The right ventricle of the heart pumps blood through the lungs where it is oxygenated and returned to the left side of the heart, which delivers to the systematic circulation. To date, no DNA variants have been described that explain the impressive levels of stroke volume and cardiac output in elite athletes. In addition to cardiac output, red cell mass or total body hemoglobin are also important physiological determinants of VO2 max. Red cells and hemoglobin are required together with a high cardiac output to generate the impressive values seen in elite endurance athletes. At this time, there are no obvious genetic explanation for the high red cell masses seen in elite athletes. Once the blood leaves the left ventricle and enters the peripheral circulation, it is delivered to the tissues, and a key determinant of VO2 mass is the ability to generate very high skeletal muscle blood flows. Additionally, endurance exercise training does increase capillary density in the trained skeletal muscles, and there are also adaptations at the level of the resistance vessels and conducting vessels. As is in the case for cardiac uptake and red cell mass, there is no clear DNA variant-based explanation for inter-individual differences in this adaptation. One of the fundamental adaptations to endurance exercise training is an increase in mitochondrial density, seen in trained skeletal muscle. Studies in humans show that highlight training individuals with widely different VO2 max values have similar levels of mitochondrial adaptation in the skeletal muscles. While twin studies show that skeletal muscle fiber type is highly heritable, there is ongoing discussion about so-called fiber type transformation in humans in response to prolonged intense training. In this context, a study in a unique set of identical twins highlight divergent for physical activity over decades showed that muscle fiber type, especially for slow twitch fibers, might be far more plastic than previously demonstrated. To conclude, the above discussion of the oxygen transport cascade show that while there is evidence, based on family and twin studies, for a genetic component of VO2 mass and its training ability, it was difficult to see this observation with any specific large effect size genes variants or combination of small effect size variants linked to key physiological pathways as a whole. Similar comments can be made about peripheral adaptation in skeletal muscle, and determinants of efficiency are almost certainly complicated by biomechanical and skill-related factors as much as they are by genetic components. If you would like to know more about this topic, you can find related research in the description below. Also, if you feel that you found the video useful, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below about your favorite research. Thank you for watching and goodbye!